Welcome back to GovCast, a video interview series from Government Fleet Magazine, where we talk about trends, hot issues, and the state of the fleet industry. I'm Nicole Osinski, Executive Editor of Government Fleet. Today I'll be talking with David Renschler, CPFP, Fleet Division Manager for the City of Fairfield, California. David, can you tell us about your fleet and its size and how you all are transitioning with infrastructure to EV charging?
Here at the city of Fairfield, we have approximately 700 units. We have everything from small equipment. We don't work on any handheld equipment, so no chainsaws, things like that. However, we do have some smaller 16-foot mowers, sedans to the medium and heavy-duty trucks, dump trucks, day cabs. We do have transit buses, so we have about 40 transit buses here, local routes and paratransit. And we also have police and fire at a separate location. So we do have 2 locations as well.
Can you tell us more about how you guys began the transition process, switching to EVs with your fleet, and how that worked with your infrastructure and what you had to change?
Started several years ago with transit. So I was working for about 8 years now with the California Air Resources Board in multiple different work groups and so forth on the innovative clean transit regulation, which it's a regulation, so it requires transit buses to go electric or hydrogen electric, so zero emission. We chose battery electric, so we started the planning process a few years ago, about 3 years ago, which led us into having some experience when it came time for some of the other regulations that have come into effect here in California, requiring us to go zero emission on our light, medium, heavy duty, and soon to be off-road fleet as well.
Can you tell us specifically about the infrastructural changes that you all have made to meet these needs?
So, we do have some pilot programs going on. So we have um, battery electric, lithium ion, 5,000-pound capacity forklifts. So we did put in those chargers, and they're proprietary, so they're not universal. You can't use them with anything else. So we've got those at 2 different locations. Then we got into lightnings and e-transits. So we received our first lightnings, I think, in June of this year, the beginning of June. And we put in 3 level 2 chargers with a total of 6 ports here at Fleet. Then we put in 1 more charger with 2 ports at one of our water treatment plants as part of that pilot program. We have a 124 kilowatt DC fast charger going in. They just poured the concrete pad yesterday at our water treatment plant that will be able to be used on both medium, heavy duty and our light duty vehicles as needed. Then we have 3 battery electric buses with 686 kilowatt hour battery packs that are on order here for our facility for starting our transit buses. I'll be ordering 5 more in the first quarter here of 23. Those are $1.2 million each, so pretty expensive stuff. We did go ahead and purchase EV fueling software, as that's going to be an important revenue source. So here in California, we have low carbon fuel standard credits, which is the amount of energy we put into batteries. We keep that data. We have a company we work with. We provide that data to them. They provide it to the California Resources Board. And then that turns into credits that are sold on the market, and that's a revenue stream for us. a very important revenue stream. So we have that money coming in. Then we need to look at fuel sales. Most fleets sell liquid fuel or gaseous fuel to their customers. We're going to need to start selling electricity as a fuel. So that's a little more complicated than liquid fuel. And so I hope that fleets are going to start looking at that, as they're going to need that as a revenue source. And the infrastructure we're putting in our main corporation yard is all going to be on 1 meter. So we're going to be putting in about 3 megawatts of power that's all on 1 meter. And that will be charged to fleet, those electricity bills. And then we will be charging our customers based on the electricity put into each vehicle. So it is a kind of I call it an ecosystem. It's because you need to do everything that you do with your traditional vehicles differently with electric. So it's almost like having two separate fleets, if you will.
And with everything that you guys are doing, what's been your top priority during this process?
So it's very challenging. There's a lot of work and a lot of research that goes into. You need to look at average daily use, the duty cycles, mileage driven, how many hours are put on per day, whether that's PTO or whether that's driving, because you need to research all of that, and then individual vehicles figure out what is out there that you can replace it with, what the battery pack size on that is, what the efficiency is, and lots of research goes into that before you determine what your charging needs, because the infrastructure takes the longest. So you might spend 2 years putting that data together, researching all of that, and then making your determinations into how many chargers you need. Because an example of having a consultant take a look at what they think you need, they came up with 9.9 megawatts of power is what they thought we needed for our chargers here in the corporation yard. When I went through that same data and said, no, based on my research that I've done over the last 2 years, here's what we're really going to need. And we pared it down to 2.8 megawatts. And that's a really big difference. That's a lot of space for transformers that and charge boxes that you can get back. So, for example, we're still going to need 90 feet by 60 feet in our main parking lot that we're going to take. That's 10 45-foot bus parking spots that we're taking up with above ground transformers and charge boxes and switchgear to provide power to the chargers that are going to go for, and dispensers for the medium and heavy duty vehicles here in the yard. That's a lot of space, and some yards don't have that space to give up. And then the other thing that a lot of folks aren't thinking about is the actual parking space itself. In between every other parking space on the medium and heavy duty, where you have pull through parking, especially if it's pulling a trailer, you're gonna have the dispenser and or the charger is going to be in between the parking spaces. So now you go from that 6-inch painted line on the ground to a 3-foot wide above ground raised concrete with bollards to protect that dispenser. And now you're losing even more parking spaces. So you lost parking spaces to the switchgear and the transformers, and now you're losing more parking spaces to the actual dispensers, and you run out of room real quick. So we ended up having to actually move some buildings in our yard to allow for traffic flow. So you have to look at the traffic flow in your yard after you make these changes. We had multiple revisions with the engineers on how the traffic flow will work in the yard. And we had to move our bus wash to a different location. We also had to add 4 bays, which the design is being done now, on adding 4 oversized bays to our shop at the main facility, because our battery electric buses, the battery packs are on the roof. They're 800 volts AC, which is a whole new NFPA, the National Fire Protection, and OSHA regulations regarding that high voltage and high amperage. So our bays have to have 10 feet from the battery pack to any metal. And our current bays in the current shop is you lift a vehicle up, you've got metal lines going through for all of our hose reels. You've got I-beams going across the building. You've got all kinds of stuff in the way. There isn't enough room. So now we're having to build those new 4 bays. And then on top of that, that also changes the traffic flow and requires us to take 2 buildings out, and they're going to have to be relocated somewhere else in the yard so that we can have traffic flow on the end of the shop. So that when you take all those things into account, the engineer came up with a rough order of magnitude of $60 million. So it's more than just the cost of the chargers and putting them in. The thing with the parking change caused us to change a whole bunch of things in our yard. So all of that stuff has to be looked at. Now, where's that money going to come from? The city doesn't. We don't have an extra $60 million lying around. Fleet definitely doesn't. We did get approved for a $12 million grant from the FTA because of our transit buses. However, we're still $48 million shy. So that's going to be a very big challenge. We are going into the design phase, and we're hoping for that construction to be done in 2026. However, we don't have money to pay for it yet. So we're hoping to work through that. And then here in California, we're required to start purchasing medium and heavy duty vehicles in 2024. So once we start buying those vehicles, how are we going to charge them? So now we need to come up with temporary charging. So we're looking at solutions for that as well right now until the main infrastructure can be installed, assuming we find the money.
What advice would you give to other fleets who are just getting started in this process?
Seek out good partners. Your consultants are going to be, your partner through the whole process. Find good consultants to help you out because you're not going to have time to do all this yourself. But stay involved as much as you can. The example I gave about one of the consultants telling us that we needed 9.9 megawatts of power, unrealistic in my eyes. And so with Fleet's intervention in that, we were able to know the vehicles, know their usages, take a look at the data, and able to pare that down to save some money and some time putting infrastructure in, because that's a lot of power.
And looking back with everything you guys have done, is there anything that you would do differently?
I would have started earlier. Um, However, starting early, working with your utility as soon as possible. One of the other things is when you talk to the utility, once you have all this data and you know how much power you're going to need, you go talk to your utility. Some fleets that I've helped out, they actually found the utility can't even get them the power they need. So they had to sell their property and go buy property somewhere else in an industrial area. So when you talk to your utility and you tell them you need 6 or 7 megawatts of power or whatever you need, right, in your yard, the circuits may not be able to provide enough power. And if they do need to be upgraded and they can provide the power, you're looking at a minimum of 3 to 4 years for the utility to do that. So that could really cause you a problem when you're trying to start buying vehicles in 24 and have a way to charge them.
Gotcha. Well, That's a lot happening. That's a lot for fleets to deal with. And with everything being said, what would you say are some key takeaways that fleets should know when switching or adding EV infrastructure?
Light duty's pretty easy. It's fairly easy to do. When you get into medium and heavy duty and off-road, uh, that's where things start getting complicated. You're going to need a lot of research. Don't just take the first consultant that you interview, and that can be a problem. So look around. There are several good consultants out there that are nationwide that help folks out. Figure out your funding. That's going to be a big part of it. And then budgeting. So budgeting in your VRFs, your vehicle replacement funds, you're going to look at pretty much doubling your price on most things. Example are buses that we have on order right now. The battery electric buses, 1.2 million. They're about 650,000 as a diesel. So we bought a 25 horsepower agricultural tractor with a loader for, I think it was around 36,000 and change. We did get a grant that helped us with 17,000, so it was about 18,000 out of pocket. A diesel version would have been 16, so it was just a little bit more expensive. However, without the grant, it would have been over double. Take a look at Lightnings, the Ford Lightning pickups. Those are significantly more. They're about double what a V6 gas version of an F-150 would be. And then when you get into the medium and heavy duty, those vehicles, there aren't that many out there that meet government needs. They're more for delivery trucks or over-the-road drayage Class 8s. So when you do find someone to work with for a zero-emission vocational vehicle, the costs are going to be at least double because it's something new that isn't out there on the market yet.
David, thank you so much for spending some time to talk with us. We really appreciate it. And for all of our viewers and listeners, thank you for joining us as well. Stay tuned for another GovCast series next time.